Today on the DunkersPodcast, we're turning up the heat, literally. Joining us is Ben Wright, exercise physiology lecturer from Brookes University, and Tom, co-founder of Porth Poeth Sauna on Abersoch's Warren Beach. Ben brings the science behind hot and cold exposure, the recovery and why your body loves a little shock therapy. Tom and his partner Gabby, the surf-loving duo behind the sauna, bring the commercial success. Today is about warmth, wellness and Welsh ingenuity, all rolled into one steamy seaside story. It's the perfect mix of steam, science and sea spray. A chat that warms the soul, chills the skin and maybe even just makes you book your next dunk and sauna before the episode's even over. Welcome Ben and Tom to DunkersPodcast.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
So, Ben, tell us just a little bit about why Brookes have actually taken this challenge on.
Well, this came from the back of a piece I did for kind of our internal networks. And this was to look at the physiological responses to both heat and cold, and to examine some of the purported health benefits for both modalities. They've definitely risen in popularity over the last few years in terms of how we can expose our bodies to both hot and cold, the different techniques, and also having an understanding of what we hear regarding the benefits, and does the research and does the science actually match some of the purported claims for these different types of modalities in both kind of recovery and wellness trends.
Okay, and presumably they did match, or did they?
Depends on what markers you're looking for.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's the classic scientific response, is it depends. Yeah. But yeah, some of the claims made do have evidence towards them, depending on the type of modality we're looking at and the purported claim. However, with any kind of research and study, there's always much more that needs to be done. Good science generally asks more questions than answers that you get. And that tends to be the case for both of these modes. But there is some quite good and quite strong evidence now to show some of the improvements in health and wellness, and also some of the more psychological aspects of these recovery methods or wellness trends in terms of improving affect and positive mood states.
Okay, so it's not totally transformational, but it is moving the pieces a bit. It's making people more aware, presumably, and it's little things. I remember from way back, they always said that if you could use a sauna, and hot and cold anyway, you could help cut inflammation and outputs like that. So presumably those are quantifiable.
Yes, yeah. Using kind of like venous blood sampling, you can look at certain biomarkers within the body, both either pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. We can also measure things like cytokines, which are small chemical messengers, which can activate either pro or anti-inflammatory pathways. So you can do that in controlled laboratories, and you can examine pre and post differences in these measures depending on the experiment. Is this in cold water immersion, or is this in more heat exposures like sauna use?
Right. Okay. So as you say, more questions than answers that immediately come out. So I'm going to go on to something a wee bit more commercial, because I'll certainly understand it a little bit clearer, and that's the commercial play for making saunas into a business, and a business that's based on the beach. Tom, what's it like to actually do it? We've all said, oh, wouldn't it be great? But you're doing it.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's all a new experience for me, but it's been great. When you think about getting down there nice and early, I suppose you get the same experience when you're doing your dunking, but getting there nice and early, lighting the fire, it's great down that beach as well. It's nice.
Once you start, but as an engineer, it's not a normal sort of day-to-day thing that you'd sort of take on board, is it?
No, no. So I suppose it all came about from I tried an onsen in Japan, and this was a long time ago now, in about 2017. A friend and I were over there and just fell in love with the experience. And I just thought, how do we not do this in the UK? How could you get something like this in the UK? And it sort of took a while before we started to get the ball rolling about actually implementing it, because I didn't really think that I could do it.
What can I just stop you there? What was it called? A nonsen?
An onsen.
Onsen.
So it's a Japanese bathhouse.
Okay.
And we went to one in Kyoto.
Right.
And the experience was like nothing that I'd ever done. It was something that I thought, this is what I'd like to do on a weekend when I've got some time to myself.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I discovered it. And then, fast forward a little bit, we'd moved to Rhyw on Penllyn, and I'd built a workshop there, and then we started running an Airbnb business up there as well. And I thought, well, a sauna would be a great offering to go with the Airbnb business, as well as me being able to use it.
Right.
And but we were kind of thinking we might be moving house here. So just by chance, I went to Anglesey for the weekend and used the sauna of Sauna Bach on the beach, which was built on a trailer. And so I thought, that's a brilliant idea. That's what I should do. And I thought, right, well, I can do this. I think I can do this. And so obviously with the engineering background, doing sort of materials research, that kind of thing, I had a big interest in anyway.
Sure.
And it sort of became a passion project that I picked up last winter. And we started the business in Easter this year. So it's still all quite new, and I'm still learning. But it's brilliant.
So Ben, have you been exposed to, literally and figuratively, have been exposed to what the Japanese are up to, and did you know about these types of therapies, or
not necessarily specifically in Japan? I'm guessing, Tom, is that more like a steam room environment? Quite high humidity.
Well, the option was there, and they did also have saunas, and they had really cold plunge pools and just a relaxation area. It was like something that I'd never seen before. It was just so peaceful and felt like a proper reset, which I suppose is the whole positive benefit of the experience. I guess it all sort of ties into the actual physiological effect that you get from being exposed to the heat and the cold.
Which is a great segue, because the thing about the dunking is that I remember from one of our very first episodes, the high that you get from dunking has been compared to that you get from cocaine. So it's like a legal high. So every day that we go dunking, people think that we're on something. Well, you might actually believe that we are. So what's actually happening inside your body, Ben, when this is going on?
So physiologically, you're subjecting the body to a form of kind of mild hypothermia, so an increase in ambient temperature around you. You can evoke that in different ways, and I'm sure we'll discuss kind of the different types of sauna as we go through. But effectively, this kind of heat stress, or this stressor on the body, starts the process of helping and maintaining your thermoregulation. We're quite tropical mammals. We like a core temperature around 37 degrees or so. So anything outside of that, or any kind of exposure to heat, we then have this kind of neuroendocrine cardiovascular response that aims to keep our body within homeostasis. So in terms of its normal operating temperature point, what's happening generally is the body's trying to cool down. So first and foremost, the skin, the thermoreceptors within the skin will heat up, and these will go to around 40 degrees or so. And then exposure to heat for a period of time, this could be through water, through air, this will then increase your core temperature. So this can rise to about 39 degrees and then potentially up into 40 degrees or so as well. At this point, the body's going to try and cool down, and you're going to get a redistribution of cardiac output. So the amount of volume of blood that is being sent around the body per minute. And this is controlled by either heart rate, so how often your heart's beating per minute, or stroke volume, the amount of blood ejected out the left ventricle per beat. So that's the product of cardiac output. And what we know is that subject to heat, you can have increases of cardiac output to 50, 60% or so. So significantly more blood is being ejected around the body. You have redistribution of your blood. So certain areas of your body where it isn't a necessary requirement to have blood flow, that can be shunted. So this is through the blood vessels having the capacity to both vasodilate, so increase in their diameter, and vasoconstrict.
Okay.
And effectively, the body is going to try and shunt blood to the skin and try to dissipate heat through evaporation that way. And
so the body's working to balance itself all the time. Whatever you're exposing it to, it's sort of kicking back and saying, "No, I'm too hot, I'm too cold," and these are the
absolutely yes.
Yeah,
and that's kind of we refer to that as homeostasis. So the normal, I think of it like the normal optimal functioning of the body and the organs. It's been happy in regulating all the processes that it should be.
Right. Okay.
So,
and does that particularly affect your mood, or is that metabolic, and is that just physical, or is it emotional as well?
In terms of maintaining homeostasis, or
in terms of whether people crave more of the same, can it become a sort of a craving rather than just a nice to do?
Yeah, in terms of sauna use and exposure to heat, there is some evidence to show these changes in kind of positive feel and affect, potential rewarding exposures like dopamine release. So having that reward, and I guess you may have discussed this when you look at cold water immersion as well, that sense of kind of a reward that you've achieved something and overcome a challenge, and that can then become potentially addictive. I'm not too well versed in kind of addictive research and addiction. That makes sense.
That's another podcast. We'll do that again.
I think so. Yeah, but I would assume that the benefit that you feel and somewhat the liberation that you feel of taking your body through this small exposure to a stressor can then not necessarily crave, but can make you be tempted to experience it again.
Dunk, cold, repeat. And Tom, I guess you've seen that yourself, have you? People come out of the sauna and sort of think, I'm going to stay here for the rest of the day.
I think, as you probably well know, but it's so exhilarating when you're in the cold water, isn't it? It makes it does pump you up, kind of. That's how I feel when I'm doing it anyway. But the feedback from everyone has been great, because everybody, I think, that's come down is already of a health and wellness mindset. And so when they're on their holidays, or whether they're local or holiday, and they've come out and they've had this great experience, it's just been really nice to be around.
And tell me, I don't know who to ask this to, but are different types of sauna, do they elicit different types of response? For example, obviously smoked wood-fired saunas, and you've got infrared saunas. I guess there's other sorts. I mean, tell me about them.
Yeah, well, I think the infrared ones, do they just heat up your skin? I think that's how that works.
Is that how that works, Ben?
Yes, that's infrared light that kind of directly goes onto the skin rather than heating the ambient air around you. So these typically can operate at lower temperatures, 40, 60 degrees or so, and don't really necessarily or necessitate any humidity. So I think often you'll see these referred to as like dry saunas, using that infrared to heat the skin. Yeah.
And I think the kind of feedback that you get from seeing the wood fired burning and the smell of the would when it's reacting to the steam in the room, because I get so many people saying that they love the smell of it. We don't tend to use any oils. I try to just keep it as natural as possible. So yeah, it's that's what it is.
That's quite evocative in itself, isn't it? Yeah. And from a health perspective, do the smells and in fact the environment, does that have a different impact on the body, Ben? Is that, or is it all just down to the extreme heat?
If we're talking about like the cardiovascular response, you're going to have these kind of counter-regulatory processes, irrespective of how the body's been heated. Now, there are other challenges. So if you are using like a steam sauna, so temperatures compared to your traditional Finnish saunas are going to be a little bit lower, but because you're using steam to fill the ambient air around you, this results in a really high percentage of humidity. And that can evoke quite a stress on the body and maybe a mechanism to really ramp up core temp. And this is because, one of our major ways in which we cool down is through evaporation. So that's sending blood to the surface of the skin. We go nice and pink and we sweat. And as that sweat evaporates, we dissipate that heat. Now, if the conditions around us are very humid, we're not going to be able to dissipate that heat and evaporate that heat in the conditions around us. And, this can be quite dangerous in certain circumstances where we become into a condition called uncompensatable heat stress, where we cannot actually cool the core temperature down because our surrounding environment is too warm. So that can be dangerous. But in terms of the responses that you're going to get from the body, irrespective of the heat source, the body's going to try and maintain core temp and skin temp through vasodilation, sweating, and redistribution of blood flow.
So do I take from what you've just said that if you're going to go into a steam room or a steam sauna or a steam bath, I guess, then it would be ideal to do that as a second stage rather than the first stage? Get used to sort of the cold, hot and cold through a dry sauna before you go into steam, is it?
I think that might be more tolerable if you're new to it. Again, individual preference is going to be huge. Some people may really like the kind of humid conditions that you feel around you and kind of the air feeling relatively thick compared to your infrared saunas. But yeah, that might be a useful starting point because some people may not tolerate the ambient conditions being warm around them better than your infrared or even your traditional Finnish saunas. But again, individual preference will be important as well.
You're using ladles to obviously put water onto the sauna to increase that steam, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying there, Ben, because I get asked quite often, is it better to go in the sea first and then come in, start from a cold position, or do you get in the sauna? And I've always preferred to be nice and warm to then get in the sea. So I don't know, is there any sort of research behind that?
That's a really good point. And to be honest, what you discussed there is kind of a concept called contrast therapy, and that's going from these contrasting temperatures. In terms of it for health markers, longevity, wellness, we don't have tons of literature at the moment regarding this. And from what we do have, there is some positive aspects. And you're right in that most studies, and that may be down to preference of the individual, is having the heating component first. So having the sauna used first, and then going into the bout of cold water immersion. There have been one or two studies as well that have done repeat exposures, so contrasting between the two for a series of repetitions. I think one thing we need to be mindful of is that what's happening physiologically is that obviously when we heat up, we get an increase in heart rate, we get an increase in this cardiac output, and we get in this vasodilatory response. And then from the moment we go into the cold, so the blood vessels will be dilated because we're trying to redistribute the blood to the skin and lose heat that way. When we go into the cold, the opposite tends to occur. We still get the increase in heart rate. We still get the increase in blood pressure, and peripheral resistance will go up. This is the the resistance of blood flow into your peripheral vasculature. This is a key concept of blood pressure. But we get a redistribution of blood rather to the extremities that we get in the heat. We get it to the core, because the cold shock response is a stress of that. It's a survival mechanism. We want to make sure that our central organs, our heart, lungs, kidneys, they're all receiving adequate blood supply. So what you tend to find is, from a dilated perspective of the arteries, they go from dilation to then constriction. And I guess one of the arguments for this as a therapy and as a modality for recovery is you kind of stimulate almost like a pumping priming mechanism of the vasculature. So you go from constriction to dilation, and that may have some positive adaptations to the vasculature itself. These are cells that line the inner wall of your vasculature called endothelial cells, and they can respond to a range of different stimuli. And one of those stimuli is the blood flow. So what we call shear stress patterns. So if you think of going from a constricted artery to then a dilated, the blood flow is going to redistribute in that area, and you're going to have a heightened shear stress response on the walls of those arteries. And that can be a signal for adaptation.
So is this is quite sort of deep, and it could be a solution for people with a number of different conditions, I guess. From a commercially, I'm going to sort of put this back and ask it rather bluntly. Is this well-being revolution a fad, do you think, Tom? Or is it that it's been around for so long that it's not a fad, and we've just got the people that don't know about saunas just need to wake up and smell the roses, as it were?
I think generally people are sort of more aware of their health these days than they were, and this all kind of ties into the recovery, like Ben has touched on, and I feel like people are just starting to catch on to the health benefits. Yeah.
And do you find, I mean, for the work that you do, Ben, you find there's no shortage of volunteers, I guess?
For things such as heat and any kind of sauna use, people are more prone to recruit and to participate. When it gets to cold, a little bit trickier, more challenging.
Okay.
But and I think one thing to be mindful of, always being relatively critical, is that when we do look at the literature for these different modes, we have to be mindful of the sample that they're recruiting and different baseline characteristics, and we need to be mindful of having the inclusion of like a control group as well.
Sure.
Which can be quite challenging with research as well.
Yeah.
But the contrast area it's been quite well used in sport. I know in football, having these large, because they have the facilities of these large tanks which they can heat and cold, and going between the two as a method of kind of, as I mentioned, that kind of vascular pumping to try to mitigate swelling and to improve function as well. So it is being used as a recovery modality. In terms of wellness, I think you're getting ideally, but both benefits of each method. But I think if you look at the literature more from a cardiovascular standpoint, sauna use does have some really good evidence towards it for kind of health, longevity, reduction of disease risk. So I don't know if you saw, there was a recent article, I think a couple of months ago, purporting that sauna use can be just as effective as a bout of exercise. And there have been one or two studies that have done that. Yeah. So it is quite interesting. And it does seem to be really favourable for health and longevity.
As you say, it's sort of health, it's recovery, and it's also pleasure, because let's face it, we mustn't forget the fact that, saunas are very pleasurable. And if only because they give you half an hour or an hour away from everybody else, if that's the case, and you're on your own.
Peace and quiet.
Absolutely. So if there was a takeaway that you would say and I'll ask Ben first. Ben, if there was a takeaway that you would say to people who aren't familiar with saunas, but who are dunkers, but who like the idea of sort of thinking, well, maybe we ought to have a go at this. Is there something that you would say, well, look at that first and see how you're changing with that? Is there a takeaway that you could share with our listener?
From more like an academic standpoint, I guess I'd say that there's really strong evidence for the health benefits of sauna, and it's forever adapting. A lot of the research does come from Finland, and there's an ongoing. I don't know if you've heard of my pronunciation might be incorrect here, but the CUPIO, ischemic heart disease risk factor study, so the KIHD. And this is an ongoing longitudinal study which is measuring sauna use and health parameters and markers. And some of the really interesting modelling they did was looking at kind of risk of mortality in sauna use compared to those that weren't. And some of the really interesting findings were using the sauna 2 to 3 times a week. There was a reduction in cardiovascular mortality by 27%.
Wow.
And arguably there may be a dose response. So the improvement in longevity or the reduction in mortality associated with the frequency, as they found that there was about a 50% reduction for those that use the sauna 4 to 7 times a week.
Okay.
And one key thing was this, that they could actually control for other biases like socioeconomic status, your physical activity, your cardiorespiratory fitness. So irrespective of these influencing factors, we're seeing that actually frequency of sauna use can have really good impact on reducing the risk of mortality. Physiologically, there's some useful evidence on the response of heat and sauna, like heat shock proteins, quite an emerging biomolecule as well.
So it's definitely not a fad as far as you're concerned. I mean,
I think
it's backed up with loads and loads of evidence. So, Tom,
you look for history for ages.
Well, absolutely, they've been around a long time. Tom, is there a takeaway that you've got that you would say?
I think just being out in nature is probably uplifting on its own. Just being down on the beach on an early morning, you kind of can't compare it. It's the same, whether or not you're getting in the sauna and you're chatting to people and getting to know like-minded people. Or dunking. I think all of it is. If it makes you feel good, then it must be good for you. That's how I.
If it makes you feel good, you've got to do it. Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So I'm going to, but just before we wrap, I'm going to ask you both a secret question, because there's always a secret question. The thing about the Dunkers podcast is somebody who's been before leaves a question for the person who's coming after. So I've got one for both of you. And Ben, I'll ask you yours. So if you could dunk anywhere with anyone and then have a sauna, where would it be and who?
Brilliant. That's a very good question. Could this be alive, or do they have to be alive, or can we bring back the dead?
Oh, it doesn't matter. You just go with it. Yeah. No, it can be anybody. Anybody.
I'm going to say, if anywhere, I would love somewhere off the Isle of Sicily, somewhere.
Okay, all right.
Italy would be lovely. Yeah, it's on my bucket list for places I want to visit. I'm a big Godfather fan, so a lot of it was filmed there.
Right.
And the guest, I would go probably a little bit of an unusual pick, but I'd probably say Rick James, obviously from if we could revive him back from the dead. And the reason for that is I think going for a sauna and then maybe a couple of drinks after, he'd be very, very entertaining.
Absolutely. Look, if that ever can happen, just include me in on the invite.
You'll be there.
Yeah. And Tom, your secret question is, who inspires you?
Oh, who inspires me? Well, in terms of the sauna, I think Alex definitely inspired me. Alex from Sauna Bach, and my dad definitely a big inspiration.
That's
He
great.
joined the Navy when he was young, in his early teens, and travelled all around the world, and kind of definitely gave me a taste of to go and explore.
Yeah.
To go and explore, yeah. So yeah, I think for me, for the question that you asked, Ben, I mean, I'm going to jump in on that as well.
Yeah, well, why not? Yeah, go.
Tasmania, and one of the beaches there, one of the wild beaches there, and probably with my dad, and be able to go for a couple of beers afterwards, something like that. I think.
Brilliant. Well, beers are definitely on the agenda for both of you.
Yeah, a bit of rehydration.
Yeah, just make sure we're hydrated before the sauna.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, ever the scientist. He's looking after us even when we're going for a beer. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. I've really, really enjoyed this, and thank you both for your time. And as I say with everything that to do with the Dunkers, all I would leave you with this thought, and that is, may the Dunkers spirit go with you. Thank you for being with me. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Tom.